Time at rest, exploring the past, slowly. 9,000 years ago, at the tail end of the last ice age, a vast, sunlit plain stretches between what we now call England, France, and Norway. England is not yet an island, but a broad continental peninsula. This is Doggerland, a land of rivers and lakes, scattered forests, and fertile lowlands that have supported hunter-gatherer communities for generations. The glaciers have begun to retreat, leaving behind gentle ridges, marshes, and open grasslands. Yet the cold of the Ice Age still lingers, carried on wind-swept plains and in the crisp air of early mornings. You stand on a ridge, spear in hand, the polished wooden shaft smooth beneath your fingers, the flint tip catching the sun. Around you, the land is alive. Birds skim over the marshes. Fish ripple beneath calm waters. And in the distance, the low thunder of hooves rolls across the plain as a massive herd of aurochs moves toward the river. Your family waits nearby, tense and silent. The hunt cannot be delayed. Winter will return. The elders speak quietly of rising waters to the east. Parts of Doggerland have already vanished beneath the floods, forcing settlements slowly westward. Some whisper of something far worse still to come. A wave so powerful, it could erase the land your people have hunted, fished, and lived upon for countless generations. The flooding of these lands will continue for centuries, a slow and relentless drowning. In time, this process will be violently accelerated by a great tsunami, triggered by the Storegga Slide off the coast of Norway. But for now, on the edge of a vanishing world, life continues in rhythm with the seasons. And beneath the earth, the water, and the sky, Doggerland itself seems to hold its breath, waiting. Before we continue, consider supporting the creation of long-form historical documentaries like this one by subscribing, liking, and leaving a comment. Tell us where you're watching from and what time it is. These small gestures help keep these stories alive and allow more time and care to go into future projects. And with that, let's step back through deep time together, following the quiet, powerful forces that have shaped both humanity and the world we call home. We start our journey not thousands of years ago, but millions, further back, to a time that stretches the imagination and reshapes the world we know. Let's move 2.8 million years into the past, into the dawn of the Pleistocene epoch, or what is commonly called the Ice Age. Here, the Earth is younger, wilder, and rawer. A planet still finding its rhythm in cycles of ice and warmth, of glacial advance and retreat. At this point, Europe is unrecognizable. The continents are broadly where they are today. Yet climates are beginning a slow cooling trend that will characterize the Pleistocene. Ice sheets have not yet dominated northern Europe, but glaciers are forming in highlands and mountainous regions, creeping downward in slow, powerful tongues of ice. Sea levels are higher than during the later glacial maxima, and river systems carve vast valleys through largely uninhabited terrain. Volcanoes punctuate the horizon, depositing ash that will be preserved for millions of years, silent witnesses to the Earth's ongoing upheavals. Vegetation is shaped by climate, topography, and latitude. Open grasslands spread across lowlands, interspersed with scattered groves of oak, birch, and alder. Marshes form where water accumulates, and slow-moving rivers support reeds, water lilies, and aquatic plants. Large herbivores roam freely. Ancestral horses graze in herds, while massive early elephants and mammoths traverse plains and river valleys. Predators patrol these landscapes: saber-toothed cats, giant hyenas, and early wolves stalk the abundant herbivores, maintaining the intricate balance of predator and prey. The ecosystem is harsh, yet teeming with life, a stage upon which early hominins will eventually appear. And appear they do. The first footprints in the European Pleistocene belonged to populations of Homo erectus-like ancestors who migrated around 1.8 million years ago. These early humans are small in number, opportunistic, and entirely dependent on the resources that the landscape provides: edible plants, small mammals, and scavenged carcasses of larger animals. The rivers of early Pleistocene Europe are arteries of life. Along their banks, vegetation flourishes, drawing grazers and predators alike. Gravelly banks preserve early hominin stone tools, simple flakes and cores struck from river-smoothed rocks, evidence that these populations are beginning to manipulate their world. They are not yet the apex predators of the continent, but careful observers of nature, following her rhythms, exploiting her bounties, and learning to survive in a harsh and fluctuating climate. Climate in the early Pleistocene is not static. The epoch is characterized by glacial interglacial cycles, though these early fluctuations are less extreme than the later glacial maxima that will dominate the late Pleistocene. The planet is cooling overall, and periods of expanded ice sheets begin to form in the high latitudes. Europe's landscapes oscillate between open plains and wetter, forested lowlands. Seasonal changes drive migrations of herbivores and predators alike, and early humans must be equally mobile, following the animals, exploiting ephemeral resources, and refining the tools and strategies that will define the genus Homo for millions of years to come. Geological processes leave their mark on the terrain. Erosion carves canyons and terraces, rivers shift over millennia, leaving gravel beds and alluvial plains. In some valleys, peat begins to accumulate in shallow depressions, hinting at the wetlands that will dominate later epochs. These landscapes are neither static nor gentle. They're dynamic, alive with forces that shape everything from rivers to the migrations of the earliest animals. The fauna is diverse, robust, and occasionally terrifying. Each species has carved its niche in this Pleistocene ecosystem, and early humans are small but perceptive participants in this web of life. They learn which animals can be hunted, which are dangerous, and how to exploit seasonal cycles to their advantage. It is here, amid rivers and grasslands, that the first experiments with tools begin. As the epoch unfolds, glacial advances will shape the continent more profoundly, creating ice sheets that will extend far into northern Europe, scouring valleys, redirecting rivers, and repeatedly challenging the survival of the flora, fauna, and early humans who inhabit the continent. These early Pleistocene landscapes are a prelude to the dramatic changes to come, a canvas on which the story of human adaptation, migration, and evolution will be painted over the next 2 million years. By tracing the rivers, valleys, and grasslands of the early Pleistocene, we begin to understand not only the environmental context of our distant ancestors, but also the forces, climatic, geological, and ecological, that will continue to shape Europe long before Doggerland emerges, and long before Neanderthals or modern humans arrive. We witness a world in motion. Rivers meander, forests expand and retreat, glaciers pulse in the highlands, and the first Homo species cautiously explore, experiment, and survive. This is the foundation of all that is to come, The early Pleistocene is a stage set for evolution, migration, and adaptation, a time when the rhythms of ice and warmth, predator and prey, river and floodplain first begin to create the dynamic landscapes of Europe. And, in this distant past, nearly 3 million years ago, the story of humans and the land begins in earnest. As the early Pleistocene recedes, Europe enters the Middle Pleistocene, a period defined by dramatic climate swings. Glacials grow colder and longer, ice sheets advance from the north, and the continent becomes a landscape of extremes. Valleys are scoured by glaciers, ridges carved into relief, and river systems grow into the arteries of life for animals and humans alike. Interglacial periods bring warmth, forests flourish, and rivers swell with meltwater, creating wetlands that sustain an intricate web of life. The stage is set for landscapes that will one day become Doggerland, though that world is still millennia away. During this epoch, the North Sea basin and the Atlantic margin undergo repeated transformations. Sea levels fluctuate wildly with glacial cycles, alternately exposing vast plains and submerging lowlands beneath shallow seas. Britain and Ireland remain intermittently connected to the continent via land bridges, allowing animals, plants, and humans to traverse regions that will later vanish beneath rising waters. These exposed plains form broad corridors, braided by rivers and dotted with lakes and wetlands, providing both challenges and opportunities for life. The megafauna dominate these landscapes. Massive herbivores, early elephants, giant deer, aurochs, and bison-like grazers move in seasonal migrations, shaping the ecology. Their passage redistributes seeds, maintains grasslands, and creates pathways that smaller species and humans follow. Predators patrol these spaces with equal force. Saber-toothed cats, giant hyenas, and wolves hunt and scavenge, maintaining balance within the ecosystem. Rivers in floodplains serve as magnets for life, drawing both prey and predator to their banks and creating hubs of biodiversity. Amid this dynamic world, Homo heidelbergensis emerges around 700,000 years ago. They are not yet Neanderthals, but robust, adaptable, and able to exploit shifting landscapes. Their movements follow herds, track river corridors, and repeatedly occupy resource-rich areas. Evidence from gravel terraces, riverbanks, and later submerged North Sea sites suggest they were strategic in their choice of habitats. Homo heidelbergensis populations experience the full impact of glacial cycles. During cold phases, ice sheets push south, permafrost grips the soil, and rivers freeze seasonally. Vegetation retreats, leaving open plains punctuated by sparse woodland. Wildlife concentrates along rivers and seasonal wetlands, and humans adapt by traveling longer distances for food and raw materials. In warmer interglacials, forests expand across lowlands, rivers flood valleys, and wetlands teem with fish, waterfowl, and small mammals. These oscillations create a constantly changing mosaic of habitats, shaping human survival strategies. Their tools reflect this adaptability. Flint hand axes, scrapers, and flakes are found across terraces and plains, evidence that humans exploited environments effectively. The Acheulean hand axe, bifacially worked and multi-purpose, appears repeatedly, including in areas later submerged under the North Sea. These implements show the intimate connection between humans and their environment, exploiting rivers for fish, wetlands for waterfowl, and plains for game. Rivers, in particular, are central to life. They provide drinking water, attract game, and serve as natural highways across treacherous terrain. Seasonal flooding reshapes the terrain, forcing humans and animals alike to adapt. Wetlands, oxbow lakes, and marshes create a diverse ecological patchwork that defines survival strategies. The North Sea basin itself is a defining feature. During glacials, falling sea levels expose vast plains linking Britain, Ireland, and continental Europe. These plains, fed by rivers descending from glaciers, are rich in resources. Herds of herbivores graze, forests provide shelter, and wetlands teem with fish and waterfowl. Homo heidelbergensis likely moved across these plains, exploiting resources and retreating as rising waters reclaimed the land. This cyclical emergence and submergence foreshadows the transformations that will create Doggerland thousands of years later. Vegetation mirrors the ebb and flow of ice. Open grasslands dominate exposed plains, while oak, birch, and pine flourish during interglacials. Wetlands forming depressions and river valleys, supporting reeds, aquatic plants, and small mammals. Megafauna follow these patterns, concentrating in lush zones during scarce periods and dispersing when conditions allow. These ecological rhythms dictate animal behavior and human subsistence strategies, creating a constant push and pull between opportunity and scarcity. Climate continues to shape land and life. Glacial advances carve valleys, deposit moraines, and dam rivers to form lakes. Interglacials bring rising seas, swollen rivers, and expanding forests. Each cycle alters habitats, reshapes migration routes, and demands new survival strategies. Human populations adapt, diversify, and gradually specialize for the ecologies of northern and southern Europe. Northern groups develop stockier builds suited for cold, while southern populations exploit warmer forested river valleys. These differences reflect climate and geography, demonstrating early human flexibility and resilience. By around 430,000 years ago, some Homo heidelbergensis populations begin evolving into early Neanderthals, particularly in northern Europe. This occurs amid repeated glacial challenges, rising and falling seas, and increasingly complex ecosystems. The exposed North Sea plains continue as corridors for movement and subsistence, even as humans adapt culturally and physically to an ever-changing Ice Age environment. Through rivers, floodplains, and open plains, they participate in landscapes dominated by glacial pulses, megafauna migrations, and dynamic rivers. Their tools, movements, and strategies tell a story of adaptation to cycles of emergence and submergence, foreshadowing the eventual appearance of Doggerland. Europe during the Middle Pleistocene is not static. Ice shapes valleys, rivers carve pathways, and humans navigate corridors of opportunity. Early humans interpreted and responded to this world. Their story is one of survival in a landscape defined by water, ice, and shifting plains. Setting the stage for the late Pleistocene and the eventual emergence of Doggerland as a hub of human and ecological activity. The late Pleistocene marks one of the most dramatic chapters in Europe's deep past. Climate fluctuations intensified, landscapes transformed rapidly, and human populations faced repeated cycles of expansion, isolation, and survival. This was a world shaped by cold, defined by ice, and punctuated by brief moments of warmth. At the beginning of the late Pleistocene, Europe entered the last interglacial, a relatively warm period, lasting from around 126,000 to 115,000 years ago. Forests expanded northward, sea levels rose, and much of the northern lowlands, including the North Sea basin, was submerged. Britain once again became an island, and human populations retreated into more stable continental regions. This warmer phase did not last. After 115,000 years ago, global temperatures declined, initiating the long descent into the last ice age. Glaciers advanced repeatedly from Scandinavia and the Alps, pushing south and reshaping northern Europe. Vast ice sheets covered much of northern Britain and Scandinavia, while permafrost spread across Central Europe during the coldest phases. Sea levels dropped as water became locked in ice. Once again, the North Sea basin emerged as dry land, forming an immense plain crossed by rivers flowing toward the Atlantic. These rivers, ancestors of the Rhine, Thames, Elbe, and Meuse, merged into broad drainage systems that cut across the exposed landscape. Doggerland, though still harsh and cold, reappeared as a wide corridor linking Britain to the European mainland. During this time, Neanderthals were the dominant human population across Europe. By around 120,000 years ago, Neanderthals had fully emerged as a distinct human species, uniquely adapted to cold climates. Their stocky bodies, broad chests, and powerful limbs helped conserve heat and generate strength. Their large nasal passages warmed cold air before it reached the lungs, an advantage in frigid environments. Neanderthals were skilled hunters, specializing in large Ice Age animals such as reindeer, horse, bison, and woolly mammoth. Archaeological evidence shows that they hunted at close range, using heavy thrusting spears and cooperative strategies. Their stone tools, associated with the Mousterian tradition, were efficient, flexible, and well suited to a mobile lifestyle. Neanderthals did not occupy Europe continuously or evenly. Their presence expanded and contracted with the climate. During severe glacial maxima, northern regions, including much of Doggerland, became too cold and dry to support regular human life. In these periods, Neanderthal populations retreated southward into refugia in southern Europe, including Iberia, Italy, and the Balkans. When conditions improved, they returned north. Whenever sea levels were low and ice retreated, Neanderthals moved back onto the exposed North Sea plains. Stone tools and butchered animal remains recovered from beneath the modern seabed confirm their presence in these regions. Doggerland functioned as a hunting ground, a seasonal landscape, and a migration route between Britain and continental Europe. However, this Neanderthal Doggerland was not the lush wetland environment often imagined. It was a cold, open steppe tundra, with sparse trees, strong winds, and extreme seasonal contrasts. Rivers froze in winter and flooded in summer. Life here demanded resilience and deep environmental knowledge. Around 50,000 to 45,000 years ago, a new human population entered Europe. Homo sapiens arrived in southeastern Europe and rapidly spread west and north. Sites in the Balkans, Italy, and France mark their early presence, followed by a swift expansion across the continent within a few thousand years. For a time, modern humans and Neanderthals shared Europe. This overlap lasted roughly 5,000 to 10,000 years and involved periods of contact, competition, and limited interbreeding. Genetic evidence shows that many modern humans outside Africa carry small amounts of Neanderthal DNA, a lasting trace of these encounters. By around 40,000 years ago, Neanderthals disappeared from the archaeological record. The exact causes remain debated, but likely involved a combination of climate instability, small population sizes, and competition with Homo sapiens. What is clear is that Neanderthals vanished before the end of the Ice Age, and long before Doggerland reached its most fertile form. Modern humans, by contrast, continued adapting as the climate shifted toward the Ice Age's final phase. Between 26,000 and 19,000 years ago, Europe experienced the last glacial maximum. Ice sheets reached their greatest extent, covering much of northern Europe. Vast regions became uninhabitable, forcing human populations into southern refuges. Doggerland existed during this time, but conditions were too extreme for sustained settlement. Only after the ice began to retreat did the North Sea plain transform. By around 15,000 to 13,000 years ago, temperatures rose, glaciers melted, and vegetation returned. Sea levels were still low, leaving Doggerland fully exposed, but now transformed into a rich landscape of rivers, lakes, wetlands, and grasslands. Herds of animals returned, birds filled the marshes, and fish populated the waterways. It was during this period that Mesolithic Homo sapiens moved into Doggerland. These hunter-gatherers established camps along riverbanks, exploited diverse food sources, and adapted to a world no longer dominated by ice. For the first time, Doggerland became a stable, long-lived homeland, rather than a temporary corridor. This moment marked a profound transition. Neanderthals had lived on exposed northern plains, but they never experienced the warm, watery Doggerland of the post-Ice Age world. That landscape belonged exclusively to modern humans. As the late Pleistocene drew to a close, the Ice Age loosened its grip. Rising seas slowly reclaimed the lowlands, and Doggerland's days were numbered. The stage was set for the final transformation, one shaped not by ice alone, but by water. As the last ice age receded, Europe underwent a transformation unlike any it had experienced in the previous million years. Ice sheets melted steadily, releasing torrents of fresh water into rivers and seas, while northern lowlands slowly thawed from permafrost. The landscape, once dominated by glaciers and steppe-tundra, began to green. Forests crept northward, and marshes expanded along river valleys. In these shifting lands, one of the most remarkable regions of Europe emerged: Doggerland. Doggerland was a vast, fertile plain that connected what is now Britain to the continental mainland. Rivers meandered across broad lowlands, forming shallow lakes and wetlands. Seasonal streams crisscrossed the terrain, carrying sediments from the retreating ice. This was not a static place. Winds swept across open plains, bending tall grasses and carrying the scent of rivers and marshes. In spring, herds of grazing animals moved across the land, leaving deep impressions in muddy banks that would later fossilize. By summer, the waters of rivers and lakes teemed with fish, providing abundant resources for those who knew where to look. This newly habitable land became home to Mesolithic hunter-gatherers, the descendants of Homo sapiens who had spread across Europe after the Last Glacial Maximum. They established temporary camps along riverbanks, building low shelters from wood and animal hides. Hearths were central to daily life, offering warmth, a place to cook fish and meat, and a gathering point for small family groups. Life in Doggerland was a delicate balance with nature. Survival was routine rather than heroic. Knowledge of the seasons, the behavior of animals, and the rhythms of rivers determined success. These humans did not dominate the land. They were an integral part of it, moving in harmony with rivers, forests, and herds. The fauna of Doggerland was rich and varied. Massive aurochs roamed the grasslands, while deer, elk, and wild horses fed along river meadows. Predators such as wolves, lynx, and hyenas stalked the edges of the wetlands, adding tension to human foraging and hunting. Waterfowl nested in the reed beds, and fish darted beneath calm waters. Seasonal migrations dictated patterns of life, and the Mesolithic people of Doggerland followed them closely, adapting to subtle environmental cues passed down through generations. Rivers were the lifeblood of Doggerland. They provided water, fish, and routes for travel, connecting camps across the plain. Small dugout canoes may have allowed movement along these waterways, enabling hunter-gatherers to follow seasonal fish runs or scout areas for game. These waterways also shaped the landscape over time, cutting channels, flooding low-lying areas and leaving behind sediment-rich soils that sustained both humans and the animals they hunted. Despite its abundance, Doggerland was fragile. Sea levels, still rising from melting glaciers, gradually began to reclaim lowlands. Small flooding events occurred with increasing frequency. Riverbanks overflowed, wetlands expanded, and low-lying camps were occasionally inundated. Archaeological evidence suggests that Mesolithic people responded by relocating settlements further inland or to higher ridges. The shifting occupancy created a patchwork of temporary homes, each lasting only a few generations before the land changed once again. Hunting remained central to life. Spear hunting allowed humans to harvest large game such as aurochs and deer, while traps and nets captured smaller animals and fish. Flint-tipped spears and finely shaped stone tools demonstrate both precision and craftsmanship. Some camps show evidence of ritualized behavior, with ochre and carvings hinting at symbolic thought, even in the midst of practical survival. The landscape itself was a constant presence. Winds whistled across open plains, carrying the distant thunder of migrating herds. In winter, frost covered the ground and rivers froze, forcing humans to adapt their movement and foraging strategies. In summer, insects and heavy rains transformed the wetlands into challenging terrain, requiring careful navigation. Fires smoked in camp hearths, their warmth contrasting with the cool air and providing a place for cooking, storytelling, and social bonding. Doggerland was a land without borders. Britain was not yet an island. The Low Countries, northern Germany, and Denmark were connected by exposed plains. The scale of this land was immense, larger than many modern European countries. Travel was measured in days and weeks, but the land allowed movement of humans and animals alike, forming networks of knowledge and survival strategies that stretched across hundreds of kilometers. Amidst this daily rhythm, Mesolithic people were aware of the fragile balance of their world. Elders passed down knowledge of the changing land, of rising waters in distant rivers, and of the slow encroachment of the sea. Some described distant storms that reshaped coasts far to the east. Seasonal floods reminded them that the land was impermanent, that the plain which offered sustenance today could be submerged tomorrow. Doggerland's richness came with a quiet warning. The forces of water and ice were never far from the horizon. Evidence of this dynamic environment survives in both archaeology and geology. Stone tools dredged from beneath the North Sea tell of human presence across the plain. Fossilized animal bones reveal the diversity of megafauna, while sediment cores indicate repeated flooding, shifting rivers, and rising seas. Together, these clues reconstruct a living, breathing landscape, a world of rivers, grasslands, wetlands, and forests teeming with life. As the centuries progressed toward 8,000 years ago, Doggerland became increasingly defined by water. Rising seas gradually narrowed the landmass, insulating higher ridges and shaping new coastlines. Camps shifted, and seasonal movements became more constrained. Human adaptation continued, guided by ancestral knowledge and a profound connection to the landscape. Life persisted, rhythmic and deliberate, until the land faced the greatest transformation of its history, the slow and unstoppable approach of the waters from the North Sea, which would soon culminate in one of Europe's most dramatic natural events. The great ice sheets that had dominated northern Europe for tens of thousands of years had largely withdrawn into the highlands of Scandinavia. Temperatures rose rapidly, forests advanced northward, and the oceans began to swell as vast quantities of glacial meltwater returned to the seas. Doggerland, once a broad and continuous plain connecting Britain to the continent, had already begun to fragment. The landscape was now a patchwork of wetlands, shallow lakes, tidal flats, and higher ridges. Despite its changing form, it remained alive, a rich and productive environment, skillfully navigated and exploited by Mesolithic hunter-gatherers. Archaeological evidence confirms that this was far from a marginal or temporary habitat. Flint assemblages, dredged from the southern North Sea, display continuity with contemporary Mesolithic industries on both the British and continental sides. Among the most common tools are microliths, small, carefully retouched stone blades designed for composite weapons and tools. Their standardized forms suggest not fleeting visits but repeated occupation, shared cultural knowledge, and long-standing traditions. Barbed antler and bone points indicate specialized hunting of fish, waterfowl, and wetland game. These tools, in combination with paleoecological reconstructions, reveal a population intricately adapted to rivers, lakes, reed beds, and forests of alder, birch, and pine. Sediment cores extracted beneath the North Sea provide remarkable insight into the landscape that sustained life here. Beneath layers of marine sand lie thick deposits of freshwater peat, formed over centuries in waterlogged soils. Pollen grains, spores, and plant macrofossils preserved in these layers allow detailed reconstructions of vegetation. The evidence is consistent. Doggerland was neither barren nor uniformly submerged. Mixed woodlands alternated with open marshes, creating a mosaic of habitats capable of supporting large and mobile human populations. Radiocarbon dates from these peats cluster in the early Holocene, demonstrating that substantial areas remained above sea level until the arrival of a sudden, catastrophic force, and that force arrived around 8,200 years ago. Off the coast of Norway, a massive section of the continental shelf catastrophically failed. This event, known today as the Storegga Slide, involved the sudden collapse of roughly 3,500 cubic kilometers of sediment, enough to bury entire landscapes. The slide extended nearly 290 kilometers along the shelf edge and plunged more than 1,000 meters into the deep Norwegian Sea. The sediments involved were primarily glacial deposits, laid down over millennia, inherently unstable and further weakened by the retreat of ice and rising sea levels. Modern hypotheses suggest that either a sudden earthquake or the dissociation of methane hydrates, the ice-like compounds stabilizing sediment under high pressure, may have triggered the collapse. Whatever the precise cause, the slide was instantaneous and violent, releasing unimaginable energy into the surrounding waters. The consequence was a tsunami of enormous scale. Enormous volumes of seawater were displaced, sending waves radiating outward across the North Atlantic. Geological traces of this event are among the clearest known from prehistory. In Norway, thick sand sheets suddenly overlie older soils. In Scotland, tsunami deposits have been documented up to 18 kilometers inland and 4 meters above modern sea level. Similar layers are found in Denmark and the Faroe Islands. Most strikingly, sediments from the tsunami have been identified across the southern North Sea, where layers of marine sand and shell fragments rest directly atop freshwater peat. Microfossils, marine diatoms and foraminifera appear mixed with freshwater plant material, a signature of water moving forcefully across wetlands and river valleys. Doggerland itself was engulfed. For the Mesolithic communities living here, the event must have been both terrifying and incomprehensible. Unlike the gradual sea level rise that had reshaped the landscape over generations, the tsunami struck in hours. It likely moved not as a single wall of water, but as a series of fast surges following rivers and low-lying terrain. Estuaries, marshes, and floodplains, precisely the areas favored for settlements, would have amplified the wave's destructive power. Camps along rivers were likely overwhelmed, Fires were extinguished, shelters destroyed, and tools scattered or buried beneath thick layers of sand. Those in the open had little hope of escape, and even inhabitants of higher ridges witnessed the sudden transformation of familiar lands into a chaotic, alien seascape. The ecological impact was immediate and severe. Wetland ecosystems built over centuries were stripped away, peat layers eroded or buried, and long-established plant communities disrupted. Pollen records indicate sharp declines in freshwater species in the immediate aftermath, followed by gradual ecological recovery over decades. Animals dependent on marshes and floodplains, fish, waterfowl, and small mammals, would have been displaced or killed, destabilizing food sources. The destruction was uneven, with some ridges spared, but access routes and hunting grounds severed. Archaeological evidence shows a marked decline in occupation in regions corresponding to Doggerland's former heart, suggesting human abandonment of areas rendered hazardous. The Storegga Tsunami did not by itself completely drown Doggerland. Sea level rise remained the dominant long-term agent of change. Yet the tsunami acted as a tipping point, a sudden and violent acceleration that turned a landscape of opportunity into one of extreme risk. What had been a place of adaptation and ingenuity became a land of danger, where human survival demanded rapid response, migration, and cultural resilience. For those who survived, the event left an indelible mark on memory and culture. It reshaped settlement patterns, drove communities inland, and likely entered the oral traditions of subsequent generations. The once connected plain, where people had hunted, fished, and moved freely across rivers and ridges, became fragmented. Paths once taken with confidence were now submerged, marshes transformed, and the rhythm of life profoundly altered. In the centuries that followed, the slow advance of the sea completed what the tsunami had begun. Islands that had persisted in the North Sea gradually disappeared beneath rising waters. Communities dispersed, adapting to higher terrain and new landscapes further west and south. Doggerland, once a bridge between worlds and a hub of Mesolithic life, vanished beneath the North Sea, leaving only sediments, microfossils, and the echoes of human adaptation for archaeologists to discover millennia later. Doggerland's story did not end quietly. It ended in a dramatic collision of earth, water, and human experience. A moment when natural forces reshaped the world and ours, leaving communities to navigate a new reality. It is a story of ingenuity and resilience, of sudden catastrophe, and of a landscape whose memory survives only in the sediments beneath the sea and in the human imagination. The story of Doggerland does not end with the Storegga Tsunami. Yet the landscape that survived was fragile, fragmented, and impermanent. By the early Holocene, the great ice sheets of the north had retreated into the Scandinavian highlands. Rising temperatures transformed forests and wetlands, and meltwater poured to the oceans, gradually raising sea levels. What had once been a vast continuous plain connecting Britain to the continent was now a patchwork of islands, tidal flats, marshes, and ridges. For the Mesolithic communities who remained, life became a careful negotiation with the waters, a delicate balance between survival, opportunity, and risk. Even in this altered landscape, Doggerland retained its richness. Archaeological and paleoecological evidence shows that humans continued to hunt, fish, and gather across wetlands, rivers, and forested islands. Microliths and barbed points suggest fishing and waterfowl hunting was central to subsistence, while evidence of repeated campsites demonstrates that humans persisted here, despite rising seas. Sediment cores reveal peat layers, interrupted by thin deposits of marine sand, a reminder of the ongoing encroachment of the North Sea. Glacial meltwater continues to flow into the North Sea, steadily drowning low-lying plains. Higher ridges and former river terraces, once safe havens, become increasingly isolated. Access to hunting grounds and water sources is disrupted. Wetlands shrink, and seasonal floods become more unpredictable. The landscape, once abundant and forgiving, begins to impose limits on human settlement. Communities adapt, moving inland, or consolidating around the largest remaining islands of usable land. The remnants of Doggerland provide a glimpse into the complexity of human-environment interaction at the time. Archaeological findings show that Mesolithic hunter-gatherers were highly skilled and mobile. They constructed temporary shelters, maintained fires, and carried tools designed for multiple purposes. They exploited rivers for fish, marshes for waterfowl, and tidal flats for plant resources. Their mobility, resource knowledge, and adaptability allowed them to survive for centuries, even as the plain beneath their feet slowly disappeared beneath the rising sea. Yet, adaptation has its limits. The cumulative effect of rising seas, coastal erosion, and the dramatic legacy of the Storegga Tsunami transformed Doggerland into a hazardous frontier. Low-lying areas are regularly inundated. Tidal surges and storm events sweep across the plains, reshaping channels and destroying temporary camps. Archaeological evidence shows a decline in occupation over time, suggesting that human groups abandoned the most vulnerable areas, retreating to safer ground along the edges of what would become Britain and the continental coastline. Fauna was similarly affected. Large herbivores, once roaming freely across the plain, retreat to higher ground or vanish from the region entirely. Wetland-dependent species, fish, waterfowl, amphibians, must adjust to changing habitats, while predators follow their prey. The mosaic of islands and marshes alters migratory routes, feeding grounds, and predator-prey dynamics. Doggerland, once a vast corridor for wildlife, becomes fragmented and challenging to navigate. Climate continues to play a critical role. Mild, stable conditions dominate the early Holocene, but storm events and seasonal floods regularly test both humans and animals. Rising seas exacerbate these challenges, gradually transforming the remaining land into a network of tidal flats, small islands, and estuaries. The North Sea encroaches slowly, relentlessly, and invisibly, reclaiming the land that had been home to humans, forests, and herds for millennia. For the Mesolithic people, this transformation was profound. Knowledge of seasonal cycles, animal behavior, and river systems, once reliable guides, becomes increasingly uncertain. Previously familiar landscapes are submerged or rearranged. Campsites are abandoned. Communities migrate toward higher and more stable land, abandoning the heart of the plain. The human presence that had shaped the environment through hunting, tool use, and seasonal camps diminishes in the archaeological record. Doggerland's story is one of gradual disappearance rather than abrupt extinction. And, in one cell view, the end of Doggerland is also a story of cultural memory. Oral traditions, passed down through generations, may have preserved the memory of the lost lands, tales of disappearing forests, vanishing rivers, and the encroaching sea. In a time before maps or written language, these stories guided migration, influenced settlement decisions, and connected communities to a landscape that no longer existed in physical form. Doggerland survives not only in sediments and fossils beneath the North Sea, but in the collective memory of those who left it behind. By around 6,500, 6,000 BCE, Doggerland is largely submerged. Only isolated ridges remain above water, and the plain that had once linked Britain to the continent exists only in the shallow seabed of the southern North Sea. For humans, the disappearance of Doggerland signals a permanent reorganization of settlement, subsistence, and movement. Communities shift inland, establish new patterns along river valleys and coastal plains, and continue the story of Mesolithic life on more stable ground. Doggerland becomes both a lost homeland and a cautionary tale, a testament to the resilience and vulnerability of human communities in the face of environmental change. Doggerland's disappearance is the final chapter in the history of a land that had been alive for tens of thousands of years. From the open grasslands and wetlands to the tidal flats and fragmented islands of its final days, it witnessed the rise and persistence of Mesolithic humans, the rhythms of megafauna, and the inexorable advance of the sea. Its story is preserved not in monuments or cities, but in sediments, pollen, and stone tools, traces of a landscape forever altered by the combined forces of earth, ice, and water. In the end, Doggerland's fate was sealed quietly, without fanfare, yet with profound consequence. Its lands now lie beneath the North Sea, invisible to the modern eye. But its story continues to shape our understanding of human resilience, adaptation, and the ever-changing relationship between people and the environment. In the commons two ways, the plain that once connected worlds is gone, but its memory endures, etched into the depths of the sea and the human imagination.